Heyo, I'm Christie Rocha, podcast host and content creator, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the Inner Edit. This podcast is all about us, the creators, the storytellers, visionaries, navigating the ever-changing online world. We are in this together, facing challenges unique to our craft, like burnout, setting boundaries, dealing with negativity, and that oh-so-familiar imposter syndrome. Join me as I chat with fellow creators, therapists, and coaches to explore collaborations, making connections, diving into creating conscious content, figuring out how to maximize our content output, and discovering that mindset magic that keeps us going. Whether you're a content creator seeking resources or just curious about the behind-the-scenes world of digital creators, the Inner Edit is your resource for personal and professional growth in the digital world. We're all going through the same things, so let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button and welcome to the Inner Edit. Hello, welcome back. All right, so if you listened last week, you know that I spoke with Chelsea Connors about using breathwork to overcome content and creative blocks. Our breath is so easily taken for granted, but did you know conscious breathwork can actually change your brainwaves? I didn't, but I've been trying it and it really does make a difference, and it does help me get out of my own head. If you haven't listened yet, I hope you do, because we all need more of this in our lives. And what's so great about it is that our breath is something we all have. That show is linked in the show notes. Go check it out. I bring it up today because my guest today, Elizabeth Earnshaw, is sharing how she got out of her own head and stopped letting the Instagram haters get her down. Elizabeth is a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified Gottman therapist with her own practice in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is called A Better Life Therapy, where she sees couples and she also trains therapists. She is the author of I Want This to Work, an inclusive guide to navigating the most difficult relationship issues we face in the modern age. And you might know her as Liz Listens, one of my favorite OG Instagram therapists who creates relationship and wellness content. Liz is with me today to talk about the Instagram journey and how she got to where she is today. She admits it was a long process, but hopes that through hearing her ups and downs, we can fast track the process for ourselves. Because where she is on social media right now is such a super sweet spot to be in. She's able to be herself, she only posts what feels good, and she doesn't let any of that negative junk out there get in her way or get her down. I don't know about you, but I'm here for all of that. I won't give the whole story away though. Let's hear it straight from Liz. Here she is. Hey Liz, so nice to meet you. Thanks for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've already off air made my little oh my gosh, it's Liz Listens.
It's
You're just a
me.
celeb in a way. Is that so weird to hear?
It is. It's funny to hear.
Yeah, right? I don't know. I just imagine, obviously I'm not anywhere in a position to know what that feels like, but does this happen frequently? Are people like, "Oh my God, it's you," or just
Sometimes it's
no?
funny. I was in anthropology the other day, and somebody was calling my name across the store. They were like, "I think you're Liz Listens." I was like, "I am, but don't look at me. I look
My
like
God.
crap right now."
That is
I had
so funny.
my newborn baby on me and hadn't slept for 24 hours. I was like, "I'm glad you can still recognize me."
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so wild.
Yeah.
I said, again off air that your name just always comes to mind when I think of the OG therapists on Instagram and you, Whitney Goodman, Amanda White, Vienna, I'm naming all these people like I know them, but
Yeah,
there's just a
all of
group
the
of
best
you.
friends.
Yeah, there's a group of you that I imagine just meet up and do retreats and have fun and talk about the good old days of Instagram.
We are actually friends. We do meet up,
Yeah.
and we do talk about the good old days of Instagram.
It's different. It's definitely a different frontier now.
Yeah.
I wanna go back. All right, so I'm I just had my whole giddy moment of it being Liz Listens, and now I can like focus on what we're here to do. I want to go back. So I know you started your account after you had your first baby, right?
Yes, yeah, I started it when my first baby was maybe 6 months or something like that.
Okay. And did it start as a personal creative outlet or was it always tied to your business? Like take me back and talk to me a little bit about your intention and mindset when you started your account.
Yeah, so from what I remember at the time, which I
Fair,
was delirious because I had just had my first baby,
fair.
and it's a wild ride when you have your first one. I remember thinking that I had just taken a course about how when you're in a profession, there's all these different types of people and they might need you at some point, but they're on these different levels of kind of education around like what you do. And one of those levels is they just know about it. So like if you think about the therapy world, they know when they feel blue to go and Google a therapist or ask their doctor or whatever it is. So those people, they're already doing their research, they're already getting information about mental health. And then this person went on to say, then there's this group that they like know about it, but it makes them nervous. Like they know that therapists exist, they know that maybe they're depressed, for example, but they don't really know how to make an appointment. And that's why you have like a website. And that's why your website should be really clear so that they'll find you because they know to look for you. But beyond that, they're kind of nervous. You have to make them feel comfortable. And then there's a group of people who they they know about it, but they don't know that it applies to them. And then there's a fourth group of people who they know they actually don't even know about it. And
Yeah.
so what that those two groups would look like is it's like there's a group who knows that therapy exists, but maybe when they feel blue, they don't think that that applies to them. They're like, "What? No, my family issues, no big deal. I would never go." Therapists are for really serious issues. That would be like if I want to harm myself. That's not for me. And that fourth group, they might not even know to recognize that they're blue,
Mm,
right? Or they might not even know that the reason that they're struggling to keep track of things might be because of ADHD. They're just thinking there's something, this is just my personality, whatever. And so I remember taking that course, and it wasn't related to mental health. I'm just applying it to how it was
mhm.
and thinking, gosh, there's so many people out there who might not even need therapy, or maybe they need it, but they don't recognize the ways in which it could help them. Maybe they can't afford it, and they're in that third and fourth group. And is there a way that I could share information with them, which was either helpful on its own
Mhm.
or would make them comfortable enough to want to seek out support? So that's kind of, I thought, yeah, I could do it on my blog, but also what if I just did it on Instagram?
Yeah.
Um, and this was before Canva existed, so there was no like writing the text in the blocks. It was just captions, and I had to
Yeah.
find photos that like made sense,
Oh my
So
gosh. Yeah, wow. Yeah, because especially considering what I imagine you were posting about, right? Like tough to find photos to go along with probably a very long caption about something about a relationship or something. Like, yeah, we're just
yeah.
constantly finding like photos of hands and hearts and stuff like that.
Exactly. It was like heart hands,
Yeah,
couples walking down the beach holding each other's hands,
right,
a selfie, a screenshot of my website. Like it
right,
was just awful,
right.
awful images. And then I think eventually I started using like Microsoft Word or something and I would screenshot what
Smart.
I wrote.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it was funny, but at that time it didn't really matter. You
right.
didn't need all of the jazz that
I
you need
know.
now.
I know. Now it's like it's a whole industry. Like it's a
It's a
whole
whole
industry on the
industry.
back end of all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you at first put your face to the account or did that come later?
Yes. So actually my first handle was at Philly Couples Therapist because I'm in Philadelphia. And so yeah, it was my name and I would post like a picture of myself or
Okay.
there might have been, a photo of me on vacation with my husband and I would
Okay.
it was a lot less the grid didn't look a certain way, none of that. But yes, I put my face to the name.
Okay.
And it was connected to me fully.
Okay. Okay. And so I guess just across the board, I'm curious, you have been doing this a while. What about it do you enjoy? Even through all of the changes of the platforms and everything, like, what keeps you in it? What do you like about being on there and doing it?
To be honest, sometimes I ask myself, what do I like about it,
Yeah.
at this point? And I've had trouble staying in it, because a lot of what I used to enjoy, I find has kind of lost its essence.
Mm,
And a lot of what gets pushed forward has to kind of fall into some sort of like, um, it has to be like, whoo, it has to like hit people, right?
yeah,
And
like
some of that,
clickbaity kind of thing.
yeah. And like it has to have this very like hard hitting message, which is really the antithesis of therapy, which is if you go into therapy, it's not often your therapist saying something like, oh, you didn't eat today, trauma response.
Right,
You
right. That would never
know,
happen. That should not happen.
that shouldn't happen.
Right, right,
You're dating a jerk, trauma response,
right,
like
right, right,
that's not usually what's happening. What's actually happening in therapy is usually like exploring what it is for you, which could be trauma response, could also be that, for whatever reason, you were drunk at a party and you liked the guy and now he's a jerk. Like there's just so many things. So when you're in therapy, it's actually much more like, well, here's some things that we could think about, or like, here's some stories I've heard before. How does that hit you? And
right.
when I first did it, I really enjoyed that part where I'm like, here's some things, this is like
Mm,
what some couples they struggle with this. Like, here's what that might look like, and all of that. And now I find that it has to be very theatrical. It has to be very loud. And if it's not, then it's not fitting into like that IG thing right now, like the reels and all of that. So I struggle. I do struggle. And when I go back on it, sometimes I'll pull back. I had my baby and I didn't really get on it very often. And then what I miss about it is I actually genuinely like sharing the information, and I
mm,
genuinely do like creating it in a way that can be, received. Like I'll think of something that is easy to remember and I'm like, "Oh, I love explaining this concept."
mhm,
And that's when I really get excited to go on there, is
yeah,
I can explain this concept. And in those moments, I just come back to what I'm willing to do, right? I don't get pulled along with, I need to explain that concept by doing a skit. And if people explain it with skits, I think it's amazing. I love watching people's
right,
skits. I love beautiful posts, all of those types of things, but that's not me.
right,
I just like to educate, and I'm actually more reserved, and I'm not I'm not I am theatrical kind of, but I'm not theatrical in that way. And so
yeah,
anytime I can step away and remember what I like, I go back into it being that person again.
mhm,
Then I find that it can be a slippery slope, right? Like I'm very quickly thinking, "Oh, that was a really good post, but it would have been better had I put it to this music or had I done this." And once that starts happening, I pull back again. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but that's kind
yeah.
of where I'm at with all of it.
Yeah, no, but that's helpful because I think it's the most relatable, right? I think we all consume content and we just think that everything was intentional, everything was, the creator is thrilled with it and they've got it all figured out. But it's really not the reality for anyone, even the biggest creators out there, even the
Yeah,
millions and millions of followers of people and all the things. Like
yeah.
everyone sort of is still a human being at the end of the day and has these struggles. One thing that was coming to me as you were talking is, all for it. Like take the step away. I think it's a great piece of advice and a great reminder. Um, I think where I know I've struggled and where other creators who've, I've gotten close with, we talk about it, it's actually the permission piece of that that is
Yeah,
hardest. And
yeah.
I'm wondering, is this learned over time that you can just go, "You know what? I'm gonna step back. I'm not feeling it right now," and then come back? Or like, how did that go? Because I think that's it's often scary territory to do the first couple of times. Fear of losing relevancy, fear of getting left behind, like all the things. Like, walk me through how you sort of bridged that gap and came to this point
Oh
of
my
just being
gosh.
okay with it.
It's
Yeah.
been like a struggle for years. I mean, I would say even starting in 2020, I started to really question just my own my own feelings about being on there when it became a really hostile place.
Mm.
I'm not a hostile, polarized person. I'm very much like I wanna my entire job is a couples therapist, so I deal with polarization all of the time, and what I'm very good at is being able to sit within it and
Mm.
figure out, how do we come together, and I found that it became a place where it didn't seem like a lot of people wanted coming together, a lot of people wanted splitting apart, and
Uh-huh.
whether that was happening by, attacking therapists or attacking individuals or content creators or whatever it was, really had to I really was like, do I wanna if this was my real life, would I sit with a group of people who are about tearing everyone down? Would I sit with a group of people where that's, like, the popular way
Yeah.
to do things? No, I would not. I would be like, "Whoa, this neighborhood, this community, this whatever is not good for me." And yet, I didn't step away, even
Mm.
though all in a way, it was, like, against my morals to be in it, because
Mm.
it wasn't somewhere I would have been otherwise. And I didn't step away because, to be honest, like you said, I was worried about losing relevancy. I was worried that I would lose followers. I had a book deal at the time, so I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
my agent's gonna be so mad at me if I do it." And so I stuck with it, and I stuck with kind of being in this sea of turmoil and sometimes not knowing how to go about the turmoil in a way that, like, I look back and I'm like, "I don't really love that about me." Um,
Mm.
and really, I would say that it was only once I became pregnant last year, it was kind of this moment of this, like, circular moment where I started this when I had my first kid, and I started it with a specific idea of I wanna help people, and that's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to be famous. I'm not doing it, um, to make a ton of money. I'm not doing it because that's the way my practice gets
Mhm.
business. And what I understand is that for some people, that is why they have to do it, right?
Right.
And so by coming to that, I was like, wait, why am I putting myself in turmoil
Hmm.
and feeling bad about it if none of the needs I have are being met by this?
Interesting. Yeah.
But it took me years to figure that out, right? Like I don't actually have a need here anymore. And that is such a privilege to say. Um, but I don't have a need. Like I have a practice that gets clients not from Instagram. I have
Right.
another book deal, but I get my readers just because
Right.
now. And I'm so grateful for, I think, the platform that Instagram gave me because of that. But by sitting back and kind of reassessing, and this is like such a therapist thing to say, it's like what the need was then has maybe changed.
Yeah.
And do I have to stick in a dynamic that's no longer working for me?
Right.
And what I came to was actually it still works for me. I still wanna be there, um, but maybe it's okay if I lose 1,000 followers because for the first month of my baby's life, I don't post.
Yeah.
Maybe it's okay if I post things that people tell me is 2 people tell me is inaccurate, or somebody tells me I used the wrong form of your or their because I typoed. Like, maybe that's okay, and, like, I don't need to get so worked up, and I was getting so worked up, but
Yeah.
still doing it, like, I would get,
Mhm.
"You don't know how to spell words, da, 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 da," and the whole night I'd be like, "I have to make, like, 8 new posts that
Yeah.
cover that old post where I got criticized and da, 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 da." And now I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that was a typo. I don't really wanna post tomorrow because this feels crappy, so I'm just not gonna do it."
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to get there, and it also comes with this sense of, "I'm gonna be okay." Like, even if no new followers follow me today,
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about, you know, just having the realization that I don't actually need to be here and how freeing and the sense of relief that you got from that. Interesting for myself, I heard that and I go, "Oh, I find it hard, but I almost, hmm, I'm, like, creating the need.
Mm.
Like, I'm almost, like, demanding the need.
Mhm.
I actually, at this point, don't need to either,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not because I'm so established that I don't need to, but because it,
Like, it'd be fine.
it'd be
Life would be
fine. It
fine.
would it would be fine if I was on not on Instagram or not on TikTok or not on anything, because I don't actually think the people that have found my podcast are from those places.
Mhm.
And I don't, and I could be wrong, but I don't on a regular basis feel like I get a ton of new listeners from Instagram. And so,
Uh-huh.
but it's like in my mind, I need to do this because I will almost like want it to be a thing that I need.
Yeah.
And
And
I don't,
maybe
yeah,
that's okay, like, if
yeah.
that's where you're at. But it
And
is
it,
interesting to think about.
yeah, it is because a lot of the time it's so defeating. And
Yeah.
so it's like, you're like, yeah, just hitting me is different. And interestingly, how you're saying that, it's like almost like knowing it might not be exactly right and just like still doing it anyway. Like it's like,
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
just
and, like, I still do it. My
yeah,
husband's a musician, and, he just he started his Instagram account. He was like, "All right, I need to get my music out there. I don't like social media, but it's just the way of the world." Kind
yeah,
of that same thing, like, I don't need it, but I should do it.
yeah,
It's helpful. And, he just started to get so defeated,
yeah,
it's like, "Oh, I don't know. Am I doing it wrong? Why am I not liked the same way? Or why did somebody criticize me?"
yeah,
And I was like, "I know, it's really hard." I do not know what happened in my brain where, like, one day I was just like, "I don't care."
yeah,
It might have been just being beaten up so badly.
yeah. I think, I I think what I'm maybe have to like think about a little bit is that for years I have always enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I've always liked it. And I think when it shifted to you should do this is when it starts feeling like, eh,
You know what? That's really interesting. That's kind of like an aha moment, 'cause I think that's when it shifted for me. Like, I started with nobody telling me I should do it, right?
yeah,
Like, nobody was doing it, so it's just
yeah,
no business was gonna come from it. It was just, "I wanna do this." It's kind of fun to share what I know
yeah,
publicly, and if it lands somewhere, that's great. And when it became this obligation of, "I have to post every day or my metrics are gonna be bad, and then I won't get a deal, and then, like, it'll
yeah,
look people will judge me. Why is so and so's account growing this much and mine didn't? And why did my post bomb and the same thing was said by somebody else, and now I have to do it better." Once it became that obligation, and then I think especially for maybe like mental health creators, once it became the obligation to say things a specific way,
right,
or I'm not saying it right, or I'm a problematic person, or whatever it is, that obligation took the joy away. And it was
yeah,
like, I'm only going to do it now when I feel like it's something I really want to say. I feel confident about it and it's aligned with what feels good. And I'm really trying not to look at metrics. I've actually lost, I think, like 3,000 followers since having my baby because I
yeah.
don't know. I
You had a
just don't
baby,
post as much. I
right?
had a
You had a
baby.
baby, right, right.
And that would have really thrown me for a loop if this was a year ago, maybe, because it
Yeah,
would hurt my feelings.
yeah,
Now I'm kind of like, well, pay attention to my baby or get 3,000 followers this month. It's pay attention to my baby. And that's not to say somebody whose account is growing and they have a baby, like they're not paying attention to their baby.
right,
Of
right,
course they are, but somewhere else, something else is getting put to the side. And I've
right.
just gotten comfortable prioritizing differently.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that is coming to me as you're talking about that too is there are so many resources now on quote unquote like how to grow and how to build a
Yeah.
platform, that I think that is another shift for me when, and I'm talking like years ago when I was in college and had a blog and posted on social media with like
Yeah.
old school Instagram, like the
Old
way we were
school.
talking,
The
like,
blogs were like you made a
yeah.
blog and people would read it and it would somehow catch fire, and that's what it was.
And that's what it was. And now I think I get so in my head about like, are the right hashtags on it? Am I posting at the right time of the day? Am I using a call to action? Am I, it's like
Is
and
the
it's
first page of the carousel bold enough so
oh
that
my
people will
gosh,
get it
am
on
I
the
do I have
page?
a carousel post? Like, like it just and you know what? I'm really like having this really interesting moment right now because so much of my show has been about promoting how content creators have a job. Like,
Yes,
often this is
good
a
job.
job. It's a real job. It deserves
100%.
support, recognition, resources, and it should be in a lot of ways taken as seriously as any other job. And
Yes.
now I'm sort of like, huh, with that in mind, that is why I bought the courses, listened to the podcast, did all the things so that I quote unquote do this right and take it seriously. But those are some of the very same things that make me want to bang my head against the wall and
Yeah.
totally stop doing it.
Yes, and I feel for people who are starting it, like, now versus when I started it, because when I started it, it was I'm sure there were rules, but I didn't know them, but it was more like, if you have something of value to say that people like,
Yeah.
there is going to be really almost like an equal opportunity
Yeah.
for it to get out there.
Yeah.
Over the years, it's become more and more complex
Yeah.
because of, like, the visuals that people can have now, the ease of creating wonderful videos, um, all of the kind of industry around it that tells you there's times that would be better to post, you'll beat out somebody else if you do it at this time. It didn't
Right.
used to be that way. It was just you showed up on people's feeds that followed you, they would share you, and that was that. Now, you might not even show up on the people's feeds who
Yeah.
follow you because maybe they didn't watch your video long enough.
Right.
They needed to watch it for 30 seconds, not 25. Um,
Right.
and so it's complicated. It's really complicated, but it also is a job. And what I will say is one thing I've done is I figured out what type of content do I like creating. And I
Mm.
like writing. I
Mhm.
don't like video. That's not me. I like do it 80 times and then I put it on and I have like hairs going everywhere. I I like writing. So I've moved to Substack and
Mm.
I'm consistent with that and I have fun with it. And I'm like, this is a place for me to be. I like being on a blog. I like writing for different um, publications. And so I put my energy there and I just know I'm never going to be a TikToker. And that's actually okay. And I think that's something else I'm sure you've seen. There's this feeling like you should be in all the spots, like you've
Yeah.
got to be big in all the spots.
Mhm.
And again, I'm saying this from a position where I'm lucky. Like I do have TikTok followers because I got lucky with the Instagram thing. I
Right.
do have a lot of Facebook followers because I got lucky. So I'm sure if you're listening, you're like, well, that's really rich to say. Like easy for you to say, just go on Substack, but
No, but it's lessons learned. It's reflection on
lessons
your
learned.
experience. Yeah.
Like, I'm happy, and for a while, it was like, "Oh, I should really commit to TikTok. I have enough followers, but, like, why is so and so getting so many? It's because I don't post enough videos. Maybe I should wear the same shirt for 8 hours in a row and do 20 videos, and it's just not me, and so I've told myself I'm never gonna be a TikTok person. I'm just
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
and I'll post maybe, but the goal is not to be big. I would like to be big on Substack. I already know that. I love Substack.
Yeah.
So it's just that's something I've found interesting too.
Yeah. It's incorporating the self-awareness and
Yeah,
just the self-awareness and then the confidence behind it to actually
do it.
do it.
I don't know if I'm always fully confident about it, but I pretend to be
Confident enough though
to do it.
to do it, to put energy into it and know
Yeah,
that in putting energy into that avenue is going to remove energy that you put into others that maybe are in like in the minds of some more popular or more beneficial or whatever, whatever, whatever. Um,
exactly.
yeah. Okay. Um, I want to go back for a second, in kind of talking about how 2020 was a bit of a hostile place on social media. I totally agree with you. One thing I don't feel has changed since then, and I wonder your stance on it, is you know, the pressure or the requirement of people with larger platforms to take a stance on every issue in the world.
Yeah.
How have you handled this? What do you think your responsibility is to your community? Like where do you sit with that?
Yeah. In the beginning, I didn't handle it well.
Yeah. It's hard.
um, it's hard. And like it's interesting to me because something that often irritates me about social media is this deceptive belief that the people posting about topics on social media are the only ones that know about it or care about it. And
Right.
I remember in 2020 specifically being really frustrated and thinking, like, I actually have done things my whole life out in the real world related to this. And now you are mincing my words, or you missed the story I shared, or you missed the organization I supported. And because you looked 24 hours later, or because you missed that post, I'm getting 80 messages attacking me. And then I'm having to send you like receipts, like, no, 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 look, I did this, I did. And there's such like a hyper focus on like something that takes someone 10 seconds, which is creating a post, and not a focus on, what are we actually doing out in our world? And I was finding even out in the world, like I would know somebody would post very strongly about something, but they weren't the ones actually sitting down with a group of people and trying to actually navigate the situation. So 2020 was like very, I don't know, which I had a lot of disenchantment about people, I think,
Yeah.
during that time. Um, and also just so much surprise about how quickly people can jump to accusations and judgments that are so harsh and belittling. But what my response to that would be is it would be to try to double down about my goodness. Oh, I'm a good person. Like, I will post about that. I
Mm-hmm.
am on the right side. I will. And there was one day where I got a message telling me that I was both, this was in 2020, not now, although it seems like it could be related to now, that I was anti-Semitic from one person. And I got another message saying I was anti-Muslim. Um, and I was like, wait, where is this even coming from? Because
Right.
that's not even what the discourse is right now. And, the one person was like, "We heard somebody saying this about you, and so I just wanted to check. I'm disappointed in you." And then another person was sharing stories saying that because I support Black Lives Matter, but because they've never seen me support, I forget what it was. It was so long ago, but support something that had to do with the Muslim community, that I must be Islamophobic. And
Natural progression of
naturally,
thought. Right.
and this was really hurtful to me because my husband's Jewish, so clearly not anti-Semitic.
Right.
And my leadership on my team is both Jewish and Muslim, and then
Right.
me. And so I'm just thinking like, okay, how do I respond to this? And I was at a wedding and I remember it like I was like shaking. I was just like,
Yeah.
I can't be here anymore. Like, because there is no way, like every day I would have to all day be posting about how I love and support everyone and that I do have a strong stance and I do take action and blah, blah, blah. And I would still be accused of these horrific things. And like, if you start accusing these things publicly, like what happens? How does that fire take hold? And the way it took hold for me is like, I just felt like I had to start making all these stances, which actually I think can be harmful sometimes because I might be saying the wrong thing. I
Right.
might be inciting anger. I might be being read
Right.
wrong.
Right.
So after that, I stepped away from my nervous system activation maybe 2021 or 22. And what I've come to decide is my responsibility as a human has always been to be someone who helps people come together.
Mm.
And if I am pressured into polarization, I'm doing exactly the opposite. And instead of being myself, I'm going with a runaway train just so I can stay on board the runaway train. But runaway trains, they crash, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And so what I see now with my clients have helped me a lot with this is I find that actually the average person is not happy with the discourse on social media.
Right.
And so I have clients, all walks of life, all backgrounds, all political beliefs. And no matter which side of the spectrum they're on, they come in and they're upset
Right.
about the way that things are being utilized to get likes. Like, a client might come in and say, I just can't even go on like LinkedIn anymore because
Mm.
seeing all of these people use my family's trauma to get bonus points and what they're saying is wrong. And
Right.
then somebody on the complete opposite spectrum comes in the next session and says, I'm so frustrated. Like, this isn't what I believe, but everybody's making it look like it's what I believe because I'm a part of a
Wow.
particular group.
Right.
And I saw therapists post about it. And now I don't even feel safe talking to you. Like, what do you believe? And so
Mm.
I've stepped back from all of that because if you feel like I'm saying something and you misread it, and then you can't come in and just spill your guts to me regardless of what you think and feel, I'm not gonna be able to help you in my role in the world, which is
Yes.
to help healing. Anyway, long-winded response, but
Yeah, no, but
kind of where
that's
I've gotten with that.
yeah, that touches on a lot of things. The first thing I'm thinking of is the episode I aired today was with Kim Young. She's a dope black social worker on Instagram, and one of
I'll
just
have to
like
look her
her
up.
yeah, she's great. One of her just absolute like line in the sands statements is, "I speak when I have something to say."
Yeah,
Like,
that's
period, the
great.
end.
That is a way more concise thing.
Like,
I speak when I have something to say too.
and that's it, you know, and she
Yeah.
doesn't that episode, like, talking to her, she just had the most, like, confidence, and I guess just
Yeah.
she made what seems so gray, like, to her, it's just very black and white. I speak when I have
Yeah.
something to say, period, the end. If I don't, I don't. You know, and, like,
That's
and
where
she's
I've
like, "And I
gotten
don't
to.
worry about it." Yeah, it's I think at some point or another, we all learn the lesson, and it's usually the hard way.
Totally.
Yeah. And then, the other thing that you brought up is something I talk about a lot, is the added layer of being a therapist and a public figure. And, here you are sharing a direct experience of like, I actually do need to watch my stances because I don't want that to limit a client feeling
Right.
comfortable sharing with me. Are there any other lessons like that you've learned that connect your profession with your public persona?
Yeah, for sure. So one is definitely, I don't know if we want to call it, I hate calling it political opinions, but whatever it is, like any stance that you take can be read by your client. And there is no way that all of your clients are going to have the same stances that you have personally, nor should they. And that can limit the way they talk to you, right? I remember even in our practice during COVID, we had clients who had different opinions. Doesn't
Right.
matter what my opinion is. I need to support them in navigating life in a healthy way, which might be helping them to come to some other conclusion or whatever it is, but I'm not going to force them.
Right.
We had some people who were like, I quit seeing my therapist because I saw what they wrote on social media and I know I'm not safe there. And
Mm,
what is that doing? Like, we're saying, oh, we don't like this person's opinion. So also we're going to push them out and
yeah,
blacklist them from the therapy world and they're not allowed to
yeah,
get help anymore. Um, and so one thing I found is when you're sharing, you have to be thinking like, how will this be read? And is it in any way going to limit what someone feels comfortable sharing with me?
mhm,
There are other people out there that can share hard-hitting stances because they don't have people coming to them that need help with maybe saving their life sometimes, mental
yeah,
health help. Um, and so that's fine, and that's wonderful that they can do that, but when I write things, I'm like, and I'm not just talking about political stances, even if I'm talking about conflict in a relationship, it's like, is the way I'm writing this going to make one of those partners think, "I'm not safe with Liz."
interesting, yeah,
Liz takes the side of X, Y, and Z, so I'm not gonna come see her. But even bigger, I'm not safe in the therapy community. Because fine, you don't think you're safe with me, but I also have a really strong belief that all of us are responsible for what people think about the therapy community.
yeah,
And if as therapists, we're sharing things and we're not thinking, and we're sharing things in a certain stance, maybe we're sharing things in a more feminine stance, and
mm,
it's making men feel like they can't come to therapy.
mhm,
The opposite could be true as well. Um, so thinking through that, I think, is really, really important. The other thing that's kind of funny that I've had a few times is a person coming in and being like, "You wrote about blah, blah, blah last week. Was that about me?"
oh.
And it'll be so funny because I'm like, "I didn't even pin you for that." Like that was
That's funny. Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
That gives you a little insight though.
It gives me insight, and look, I have really great relationships with my clients, so I've never had somebody be like, I left that session and you must have been writing about me." But they'll say something like, "I saw that you wrote about, like, boundaries with in-laws," and, like, was that because, like, of what I said in session?" And I'm like, "No, actually, I don't remember you really talking about that, but interestingly enough, that must resonate with you, so let's talk about it."
Yeah,
Um, but so I've also been really careful, like, if there is a moment in a session where I'm like, "Oh, that's That is a concept I could explain. I actually don't share that right away, like, I'll wait
Okay.
months. I'll
Yeah.
put it on a piece of paper, and I wait months 'cause I don't want anybody to be like, "I just left my therapist's office, and now she's talking about me," 'cause that
Yeah.
doesn't feel good.
This is gonna tell you a lot about me. I would actually be thrilled if
Thrilled.
therapist said
Well, I
that.
know, I have
I'd be
one
like,
client who
"Yes."
loves it. I have one client who's like, "So are you gonna write about, like, what happened today? Because it's a really good example of how I didn't listen to you and it blew up, and I think you should tell people about it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to tell anybody about
I
it."
used to make, like, a while like, it was, like, over a year ago. I was on this kick of making all of my I'm gonna well, okay, so I've gone through phases of TikTok. In my first phase where I was, like, really in it for a while, I was, like, basically doing all videos where my therapist was the main character in some way or another.
That's so cute.
We got, like, the biggest kick out of it. I would always, like, text her the video, and she I'm like, "I know it's out of hours, but, like, this is funny." She would die.
I love that.
So
I
I could
love it.
yeah.
Someone said they were gonna make an account that was, like, times I didn't listen, and it was gonna be like it was a more snappy hashtag that was a play off of Liz Listens, so it was, like, something
So
about
good.
not listening,
Yeah.
and it was gonna be, like, almost like Upworthy style
Oh
posts,
my gosh, it's
but, like,
funny.
explained the story of, like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think,
it's
you
kinda
know,
funny. Yeah.
I don't mean to take away from seriousness of the topic, right? Of what we're saying here. I do just think my experience with therapy is that if you're not having some amount of fun and laughing about it, like, you're laughing about
Oh, we
yourself,
laugh
laughing
all
about
the
your
time in therapy.
experience right, like, I think these are some of the things that I mean, this before I rebranded to focusing on content creators, like, my whole thing was, therapy is for anyone and here's what it's like,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
it's just funny because I would, like, love her to have a TikTok about our sessions.
I
That'd be
know.
so funny.
It's really funny. It's
Yeah.
really funny, but I've found that some people it's not that they're upset, but they're like, "Did you
Yeah,
not
of
tell me
course.
that you thought that about me?" And it's
Of
like,
course.
"Oh my gosh, no, I would tell you."
Of course. Yeah,
So
no,
just
it's
something to
not
be
yeah.
cautious
I feel like you
about.
have to know your client too, right? Like,
Oh, yes. There's
she
some that
knows I'm on
yeah,
social media and I have fun with her. So if she did it about me, I'd be like, absolutely, like have a ball. But that's me, you
absolutely,
know? Yeah.
absolutely, and I think in any industry, it's the same, like, even if, let's say you're a stylist or something, like, you might share a story about one of your clients, but you might know another client is not public, and you're just
Right.
not gonna share those stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked now about, your public platforms in relation to your profession. Like, has there been any overlap, any lessons learned that maybe your account or your public persona, if you will, has impacted your personal life, your personal relationships? Has there ever been a need for boundaries there, or just like, oh, let me reevaluate this? Like, how do you decide what to share about your personal life versus not? I just asked you 40 questions, so pick which one
I
feels right
love
to
all
you.
the questions. Um, yeah, in a positive way, it's influenced me for sure. I've met amazing people. You mentioned a lot of therapists earlier. I'm
Mhm,
friends with all of those people you mentioned and
mhm,
like truly friends. And so just being on social media has given me that opportunity. I feel like I've learned a lot in terms of just skills. Like, I know
yeah,
so much about tech now and so
yeah,
much about presenting yourself and creativity and colors and I just know
right,
random things. And so it really has been a good thing. I don't want to only talk about what I've learned that has been negative. I've learned how to negotiate like deals because
mhm,
somebody wants to use my account to advertise something. So
mhm,
a lot of things. In terms of my personal life, I think a few things that I've learned to apply is number one, what I talked about earlier is that my nervous system would get really overtaken if somebody was upset with me on social media, which is just it's interesting because I actually don't get upset in real life when people are upset with
I
me.
know, I find the same way.
What do you think that is? What's the psychology behind that?
I don't know. I
That
don't
we
know, you
can't like
tell me.
fix it maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's that it feels like, so out of control. Like, if a
yes,
stranger is saying something about me, it's like, I don't know you to actually, like, show you this isn't true or fix this? And what are you going to do with this
I was
information?
just thinking that. It's the what are you gonna do with it? Yeah, it's the unknown. It's a
Yeah,
little
like
look at
who
me.
are you?
I'm adjusting my body because it's making me uncomfortable
Well,
even just thinking about it.
who are you? What is your intention here? I
Yeah.
can't read your face. And anything, the hard part is we're missing all of the real components of human relationships because
Mhm.
we can't we can't feel each other. Like I
Yeah.
can't read the person who made fun of my spelling. Are they just being silly and sarcastic?
Right.
Because if they were, then I'm silly and sarcastic back. Or are they being mean? Or they put, so you can't tell. So what I realized though is that impacts the people around me. I
Mm,
would get so disturbed that I would be like irritable and short and I couldn't get out of it,
yeah.
or I'd be like rocking my first baby and this I remember this one time I this is a funny story. Can
Oh
I tell
gosh.
it to you?
Of course. Of
It
course.
goes with your question. Somebody had asked me, this was in the early days. My son was still a baby and I was rocking him and I remember I had done the question thing and someone asked like what's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received about relationships? And I wrote let them eat the hot dogs in quotes. And then I explained what that means, which it
Okay.
means, my aunt had told me when she was in her marriage and her kids were young, she wanted help from her husband, but when he would give it to her, she would come home and complain and ruin it and da 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 da. And her example of that was like, I would come home and I would want him to make dinner, but he would make like hot dogs. And I
Mm,
would just be like, why are you feeding them hot dogs? Fine, I'm just going to make a real dinner and da 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 da. And then
right.
at the end of the day, I would be tired and miserable. So my advice to you, Elizabeth, with a new baby is like, if somebody else is making dinner, let them make hot dogs. Like
Right.
just let it be.
Right.
This woman on
Oh
social
God.
media was so infuriated with my advice.
My gosh.
So she wrote me this block of texts in her messages. Like, I'm shocked with you, included links about the health effects of feeding children hot dogs. And
Oh my gosh.
that advice isn't taking into consideration all body types and all health.
Oh
She
my
totally missed the
Lanta.
point.
Right.
Like,
Right.
if you're allergic to hot dogs, like, don't let them eat the hot dogs. But the advice is
Right.
like, let people help. Oh my Lanta, I know. So
Let them eat chicken nuggets, like
let
whatever.
them the advice is just let people help you and don't be
Mhm.
a bee about it. That's just
Yeah.
the advice.
Right.
So she wrote all of this. I'm rocking my baby, like breastfeeding, and I just remember being like enraged
Oh,
and like holding my baby and he was crying and just being like, stop crying. And like I didn't know
yeah.
who to deal with. Like this baby that's crying, this person who's like yelling at me about it,
Yeah.
just a stupid quote. And I remember I wrote back to her, like, I'm so confused. You don't have to eat hot dogs, but my advice is that if somebody's helping you, take the help you receive. And she was like, wow, I thought you were a nice person, but you're a bitch.
Oh, nice.
And I couldn't get out of it the rest of the night. Like, I
Mm,
still remember that moment.
mm,
And so something that I've learned over time, and I mean, that was the beginning. So I allowed that type of thing. And my
mm.
sister would sometimes come over and visit after I'd gotten like a message. She'd walk in the door and she'd be like, what happened? You look weird. And I'd be
Yeah.
like, nothing, I'm fine. And she'd be like, something's wrong. And I'd be like,
Right.
well, look what this person said. And she'd be like, why do you care that they said that? That's not that big of a deal.
Right.
And so I've really had to learn to cool my nervous system off and how to set boundaries with I actually don't read my messages in the other message box at
Okay.
all
Okay.
because they're not people that follow me or I communicate with.
Okay.
Those were always where the meanest messages were in
Yeah.
that other box. If I see the start of a message looks like you can tell how people are
Nasty.
starting.
Yeah.
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 I don't want to hurt your feelings, but
Right.
I don't open it. That's my boundary.
Good.
If I'm with my kids, I don't open social media anymore, not because I think it's a distraction, per se. I wouldn't care if I could open it and check and respond to comments, but because I know that I got really weird when I did.
Mm,
So I just don't do it anymore. Um, I've also learned that I'm a huge people pleaser
mm.
and that I always wanted everybody to like me. And so I would water down messages, or I would
Mm-hmm.
apologize for things that don't need apologizing. And so over the last few years, I've become less of a people pleaser and much more confident that I know I'm not always right, for sure, but that most of the time what I'm saying is what I truly believe. And so I'm okay with that. The other thing I think I've learned is that it's much more powerful to talk about what you believe instead of what you don't believe. And one of the biggest traps I see people on social media getting into is almost gossiping about everybody else, and that's where their energy goes. So, it might be um, five five reasons that therapists on Instagram are problematic, or how to know that the CBT therapist you're following is not trauma informed. All of those things,
Yeah.
those might not be the best examples, but what happens is I look at those accounts and I think, I don't actually know what you believe.
Right.
And I've gotten caught in that, right? Like 5 ways to know that your therapist might not be a good fit for you. And instead, what I've learned that feels more aligned with me is 5 ways to know that your therapist is a good fit for you, or this is who I
Mm-hmm.
am as a therapist, or this is what I believe. And not using my platform to put others down, but just using it to elevate my own voice. And that feels better to me. It's not about grappling with everybody around me. It's like, this is my space. I'll use it to share my own message, and I'm not using it to put anybody down.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, you know, people posting quote unquote like what works versus what is authentic and genuine
Yeah.
and aligned with their values,
Yes.
and I think I just know, and this again, this like you said it, I'll say it, we've all done it in some way, shape, or form.
All of that.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy when you are posting with consistency or doing all the things you think you should be doing and it's not working. It's like, well, let me just throw this spaghetti at the wall and see if it works. And then unfortunately, in some cases, that
It
is
does.
what is rewarded. It does work. And then
Absolutely.
but you might but I yeah, I think your point is to really like sit with how it made you feel because
And I still
if it doesn't
accidentally do
feel
it.
good, let's
Yeah.
not keep doing it. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I still do it. I'll think after the post, I don't why did I do that? Was it because I knew it was gonna do well?
Yeah.
And if it's because of that, and I don't feel good about it, that nervous system thing happens to me again, where I'm all anxious. I'm like, "Do I delete
Mhm.
it? Do I keep it up?" Um, and I think it's important to know that everyone makes mistakes and they don't share what they meant to share and all of that. But
Yeah.
what I try to go back to is, okay, I'm gonna try not to do that next time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna try to be me and aligned with what I actually feel and think.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So last little question and I hope it is a easy one for you. If it's long, if it's like this big complicated thing, you can let me know.
No
Um
worries.
but is there any one or two any specific ideas that you have or tools that you use that when you are in a good creative flow, like any productivity tools that you use to kind of make things easier that you like anything come to mind for how you kind of keep on track and stay the course
Yeah.
productivity wise?
So, like I said, Instagram maybe has fallen off of my radar a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
I am very consistent with Substack.
Okay.
Um, and the same things that I would use to be consistent with Instagram, I use in a way with Substack. The most simplistic is I use my email box to
Okay.
write myself ideas. So I email myself.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, One thing I know about myself, and maybe this will resonate with others, is if I have too many apps doing too many things for me, they end up making me personally less productive. And I know they work for other people, but for myself, at first I downloaded all the things,
Right.
and I had like a million like Airtable and this and that. And they're wonderful and people really do well with them. But for me, I'm not the type of person that's going to sign into 10 accounts and do all of that. And I'm the type of person that my best posts, they always hit me at a random moment.
Yeah.
And so as soon as it hits me, I email myself.
Okay.
And I email myself pretty much what I'd want to say as quickly as I could, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's just a sentence stem, this is the first sentence that I can still feel that passion and excitement. So it goes straight to me and then they're in my email box. And then what I do is I now have somebody that makes my posts. I just forward those I sit on them for a day to make sure I still feel that way.
Mhm.
I edit them and then I forward them to the person who makes my posts.
Nice.
In the past, I worked with people who were like, make your post, put it in Airtable, I'll make it for me. Something that I've gotten better at doing is if I'm hiring someone, I want us to work together. And some of that people pleasing I used to do, I'd be paying others, but I would completely use their process,
Right.
even if it didn't work for me. And what I've gotten better at doing is being like, I completely respect you, love Airtable. That doesn't work for me. The only way I work is I forward my emails, and hopefully if you wanna use Airtable or whatever, you can put it in there, but I'm not gonna do that. Can we work? Is this gonna work?
Mhm.
Um, so I've just been more honest about the ways in which I don't work. So
Mhm.
yes, email, my favorite thing, my notes app, my favorite thing,
Mhm.
nothing super fancy. Um, the other thing that I use sometimes is voice notes.
Mhm.
So if I have something, I might put a voice note and that I would also forward to the person and I say to her, just use my voice note to make a post.
Okay.
And then lastly, I do use Later.
Okay.
I do use one actual thing that's built for social media. And Later's great because it does tell you when to post. It tells you how well your posts are doing. It helps everything be in a spot. If I ever am uncertain, like let's say that something in the world happens where it's not appropriate for the planned post to go out, I can
Mhm.
easily move it to a different day. So,
Right.
so I really like Later. I
Okay.
use WhatsApp to communicate with my
Mhm.
help, but I try to for a while, I got really complicated. I had all the things like
Yeah.
Airtable, Canva, Later, da da
Yeah.
da 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 da. And it was also making me stressed. And as I'm trying to figure out how do I like being in this place again, it's like, well, I like just writing it down and sending
Yeah.
it off.
Like, reel it in. It just doesn't have to be that
Reel it
complicated. Yeah.
reel it in. So those are my very basic things that I use, my
Yeah.
my tools.
Yeah, no, it's helpful because I feel like the thing that's getting overwhelming for me that started out as like, "Whoa, look at this great tool. This great tool is like all the AI stuff." It's like I
Yes.
have my hand now in so many different AI tools that I'm like I've just recently in the last week have been like, "Okay. Okay. I really need to sit down and evaluate which ones are working and which are not and which ones I enjoy and which in this because they're
Right.
so helpful, but at some point, like you said, am I actually now spending more time inputting the information so for
Exactly.
AI to, like, do what it does? So it just yeah, so
Are you
there are
spending more time, like, putting your password in and
right,
than
like,
actually creating?
yeah, and there's not I haven't found, like, one yet that does everything I want, so it's like, I have one
Right,
for my video clips and one for my caption
right.
things and one for this and one for that, and it's just like, all of a sudden, this has become a little much, and that's just
And then you kinda, like, lose what was the purpose with this post I
yeah,
totally
I
get
agree.
it because
Yeah.
I did with everything along the way, whether it was, the design, I would have, like, 8 different design things, and then when it was popular to have the posting the apps that could post for you, I had, like, Planoly and Later and blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And then when video became more popular, I had like mixed captions and this TikTok video editor and this and this and that. I'm like, oh my God, one video that is 30 seconds long is going through 8 different apps
I
before it
know.
comes to TikTok. And then I'm wondering why I don't like to do it anymore.
I know. It's just yes, it's like grateful for the amount of resources and everything, but
Absolutely.
like
Pick and
we
choose.
don't have to use all of them. Exactly, exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, Liz, is there anything that based on our conversation that you wish I would have asked you and I didn't think to, or anything lingering on your heart, mind, or soul that you want to leave your fellow creators with today before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that I want to make it clear that there are a lot of things about social media that are really hard and that I've kind of come to terms with. I don't like that. I'm not going to engage with that anymore. And that I also very clearly understand the benefits
Mhm.
and so much good can come of it. And I think my hope for people who utilize content creating social media is that maybe more quickly than I did, that they
Mm.
can learn how to create that barrier between that space and themselves, like who they are as a person. And like any other job. Other jobs, I think you can kind of go to them and you leave at 5 p.m.
Right.
and like it's like, okay, I did my best. It's what it is. Because social media is always there, it can really be internalized. It's like,
Yeah.
Why am I not popular? Why did this person not like what I said?" Or
And it never turns off. It
it
doesn't
never
close at 5.
it never turns off, and for
Right.
whatever reason, it becomes very highly internalized.
Yes.
And I I think there's a world where you can do really well on social media and be popular and get what you need from it, and maybe get to the place where I'm at a little sooner,
Mm,
where you recognize who you are as a person is separate from all of the BS that can happen on there.
yeah.
Um, and, maybe don't allow it to keep you up at night as much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Good.
what I'd want to leave with.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's so relevant because it's like it is a machine. It's meant to keep us sucked in. It's meant to have us questioning ourselves all the time because more is always better and
It's
we're
like
not
living in a
robots.
casino.
Yeah.
The same psychology that's used in casinos is used on social media. And so you're living in a casino.
Yes. No, that's good. I've heard it described oftentimes as like the wild wild west, but casino is
It's a
actually
casino.
it
'Cause
is.
you think if I pull the lever one more time, I'll get more likes this time, or yeah.
And there's no windows and no daylight.
No windows, no daylight, they manipulate the feel of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a casino, you gotta exit it sometimes.
Yes, no, that's awesome. I like that. Okay. All right. Well, Liz listens. So nice to meet you. Thank you
So
so much
nice
for
to meet
being
you.
here and doing this. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, it was so good to meet you.
Oh my gosh, it's a casino. That is so spot on. I love this analogy. I'm so grateful you shared it with me, Liz, because it is exactly what social media is. It is engineered to keep us inside, keeping us pulling the lever for those likes over and over and over again. But just like a casino, we have to get out. We have to leave because only then can we find why we wanted to go inside in the first place and how to get ourselves back to what feels good and what aligns with our season of life and our values. That's when we hit the jackpot and start making this casino work for us, not against us. Liz says it has taken her several years to figure out what works best for her, but she wants to help us fast track it for ourselves, and we can. We just have to deconstruct her journey a bit. So, like I said, Liz Listens is one of my favorite OG Instagram therapists. From the very beginning, Liz knew her audience. She wasn't trying to reach people who already had therapists or who were already searching for answers to therapy questions online. She was niche down, specifically targeting the groups of people that didn't know about therapy or that they knew about it but didn't think it applied to them. Her entire goal was sharing information, educating people about what therapy is, how it can help, and making them comfortable with the idea of therapy. I love this, and this is really how I started with Sass Says, just from the opposite point of view, not the professional, but as the therapy goer. Anyway, she had a rhythm, and as the platform changed and the algorithm changed, she felt like she had to change too, so she did. But she didn't really like it at first. The way Instagram wanted her to play didn't align with what she wanted to deliver. But it's a chase, and you feel like you have to keep up. I know I do at least. And so she kept going and going and going, but there is a tipping point. There is that one last straw where things go from coulds to shoulds, and I'll be honest, all those shoulds take the fun out of it. I did a show a while back with Katie McDonald, episode 177, if you want to go back and listen. Katie and I discussed leveraging self-care to gain a competitive edge in our businesses. And I was recently with Katie at the Luann Live 2023 conference. She was a panelist and speaker, and her talk was so incredible. She talked about our shoulds and how unhelpful they are. The pressure can be unbearable with shoulds. It leads to burnout. You know, I've talked about burnout before and how to cope with it here on the show, most recently in episode 207. It's linked in the show notes. Because if we can find a way to change those shoulds into coulds, it makes all the difference. When something is a choice and not our obligation, it feels so much better. Elizabeth didn't fall for the shoulds. At least she didn't for long. She realized her sweet spot was the educational content, the written content, maybe an occasional video. But she figured out what really felt good for her and did it. And yes, she lost followers. That felt a little rough. But if you are doing something that isn't true to you, if you're doing it just for the followers, do you really need those followers? Do you want them? And if you think you do, then maybe that's the casino talking. And then there were the haters. That's another topic altogether, but we all know how bad negative comments can be, and that's where boundaries come in. Elizabeth is not the first guest I have had to mention boundaries. Kim Young was on not too long ago, and she has incredibly strict boundaries. That was a great show to listen to if you hadn't had a chance yet. Episode 204, it's linked in the show notes. Liz says the boundaries help protect her nervous system responses. And here's the thing, it's never too late to set some boundaries. We've probably all had our moments, read a crappy comment, and got in our heads about it. We let our nervous system take over. But it's the new year, and this is a great time to start fresh. Forgive yourself, set a boundary, and move on. Negativity is not what we're here for. And I love that Liz Listens is all about using her platform to elevate her own voice and her own beliefs and not bring others down, because she wants people to know her and understand what she stands for, not just see what's wrong with everyone else. I'm so grateful for this conversation. It was so wonderful getting to talk to someone that I have followed along for so long. If you aren't already following Liz Listens, please do. Her website's also linked in the show notes where you can learn more about her writing, her work, and more. Liz Listens, thank you so much for joining me and my listeners here. I loved every minute of it. And thank you for listening. I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. To learn more about me, my world, all the things going on, head over to ChristieRocha.com. Bye.